I think every client is telling us something, we're just not listening. How are you as a business responding? Have you got the right people and the skill set?
Do you think likability in your practice area, do you think that's right? That your clients need to like you?
I've never thought about it in that way. Possibly yes.
Joanne Owen is a partner and global co-head of the real estate sector at DLA Piper, advising leading investors on complex cross-border property transactions.
AI is enhancing the way in which we work. It should drive efficiency. It should drive all sorts of enablers. What do you do when clients say, we don't want you to use AI? Ultimately,
Welcome again and welcome back to Beyond Billables, Lessons from Top Law Firm Partners, the podcast where renowned and well-known law firm partners reveal the secrets of their success. I'm Stephen Rodney, founder of Integrate Coaching, where we produce tailor-made lateral integration programs for partners joining new firms, and formerly co-founder of Fox Rodney Search, previously one of the best-known legal headhunters in the last 25 years. I'm really delighted that joining me on the pod today is Jo Owen, who is Global Co-Chair of the Real Estate Sector at DLA Piper and very highly ranked in both the Legal 500 and Chambers directories. Very warm welcome to you, Jo.
I'm honoured to be invited.
I think the honour is mine, really. So, Jo, tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a lawyer initially, and then to becoming a partner, and then to your current role.
So how long have we got for the podcast? Okay, so I did not come from any form of traditional legal background.
Okay.
I grew up in Staffordshire. My father was an architect, and I quickly decided as soon as I started secondary school that I didn't want to be like my fellow colleagues because they were aiming for languages and had an idea they either wanted to teach or do other things. And I sort of went through that range of professional decisions. Doctor, no, can't stand sick people and blood. Animals, vets, no. The law, that's interesting. And my father was instrumental actually, because he opened my eyes to the fact that law pervades everything that we do. And that made me realize that would be something which would provide constant challenge and something that I could find a path into. I did the traditional route back in the old days where if you wanted to be a lawyer, you tended to do a law degree and as opposed to anything else and convert. And I managed to secure some really great university offers, but I decided to do a more modern European approach that Exeter University was offering. And then I sort of just did what everyone else did, which was applied for training contracts. And at the time, I applied and I was offered Dib Lupton Broomhead, as it was.
Indeed.
And I found myself joining at the time that their merger with Allsop Wilkinson was announced. And I was asked, I was told that they needed more trainees in Manchester. And I thought I was starting in London. Girl who'd grown up in Staffordshire, desperate to head after the wonderful greenery of Exeter and a wonderful year at law school at Nottingham. And a load of my pals were getting off to the city. I found myself in Manchester for a year, and it was probably not my happiest, but it was at a pivotal time when DLA was starting to be formed. And then in terms of my focus on real estate, again, I talk about my father. My father was an architect, and I, at the time, I found dealing with large buildings and you got to wind back the clock a little without sounding ancient. Real estate was very much asset based. Now it's corporate based. And I love the fact that I could see buildings around the city that I had worked on and had the ability as a junior lawyer to transact. So as a trainee, I naturally felt very comfortable. And real estate has been my home ever since. So I didn't take any gaps because I couldn't afford to. And I had a very traditional law way path. So I didn't have a change of career, change of plan.
Yeah.
I quickly decided when it's sort of my mid-teens, law was going to be it. And I just set out, and that was the story.
Okay. So then you became a partner in London
I did.
rather than Manchester.
Yeah, so I moved to London a year after into my training contract. So it was a left ball curve, and I made partner in 2006. My gosh,
Yeah.
20 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun.
And I first remember Catherine Usher mentioning you, actually. I remember because we used to do quite a lot of work with Catherine, I definitely remember her mentioning you, and in a very positive light. And then obviously you left DLA. So talk us through that, and then coming back and into your current role.
Yes. So, I mean, I make this comment to people on their own career journeys that if your whole journey is at one law firm, sometimes it's difficult to be seen as anything other than the trainee or the junior. Sometimes you have to go through different paths. And again, when I was starting out, I remember one partner saying to me, Joe, you've got three moves, so don't make the wrong move because anything more becomes an unexplainable. Now, I think we all know that partners do move around more than that. So I had got to a point in my career, I'd had huge opportunities and success. I was enjoying what I was doing. I'd had a struggle to become a mother. And that was an important part of my life at the sort of later part of 2008 through to 2011. And it got to a point where I was sort of talking to my husband, and I'd been approached by different law firms at different times. And I was approached by Proskauer to look at building out a private equity real estate platform, something so different to what I had been doing. And I was cognizant that sometimes you have to take a leap, and sometimes it's good to do something out of your comfort zone. And I sort of glossed over the sort of beginning of my career, but I've always been slightly maverick. I chose Dip and Broomhead as opposed to other well-known law firms because they sounded like they were on a mission to do things. Um, and despite having decided to leave DLA, and there are various reasons around that, I didn't feel that I wanted to go to a comparable, equal law firm with a ready-made real estate sort of offering because that would put me in direct competition. I
Okay.
wanted to do something different. I didn't, perhaps it's this sort of sense of loyalty, this family that had, I looked at the firm, had sort of it carried me through a journey, sort of difficult times. And the opportunity that was being presented with Proskauer was a hugely exciting. They'd had new Laterals joining. They were on a growth trajectory in London, hugely successful over the pond. But it was something new and different. And for me, that allowed me to sort of think around, what do I want? If I apply the lens of the older Joe now, did I think about it not working or failing, or clients not following? No, I had a deep inset belief with that the people I would was sort of joining had something that I wanted to learn from and they could offer. The clients who followed me, we'd spoken about it at length before, and I was there to build out and be part of a growth story. And that was in itself exciting. I did, however, join several weeks before Brexit was announced. So
Right.
very difficult things that came in, which required me to sort of think about how we would go to market, how we were going to present ourselves when at the time, and if real estate isn't your thing, pretty much the world stopped in it for London at that time for a few weeks. And it was frightening beyond belief. But that's kind of how my journey from leaving DLA to joining Proskauer came about.
Okay. And then you came back.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
So I had nearly 4 years at Proskauer, and I really enjoyed it, and I have the greatest respect for everything they were doing. But looking at my practice, looking at my clients, looking at the way in which I could see the transaction trajectory heading, where that was more pan-European portfolio-based transactions, possibly hub from London. And it was harder when there wasn't that inbuilt tapestry, the jurisdiction connectivity. And whilst you could choose best in class locally, they were never part of your P&L. So the push and pull factors were harder at times. And I'd had a conversation with a couple of two instrumentally important key clients, and one actually said to me, I think your time is done at Proskauer.
Oh, really? That's
And
wow.
it was,
Okay.
and I was like, oh, okay. And I went home, and it was sort of like almost like a dance set. That happened towards the end of the week. I had an email from a former partner who was then international group head for real estate asking me for a coffee. I then
Right.
had an email from the senior partner, Andrew Darwin, also saying, I feel like we've not spoken for ages, Joe. And my
Right.
first reaction when I got this was, again, I spoke to my husband. I said, oh my God, what on earth did I do that I'm being called back for that was wrong? And he just looked at me lost. And he just said, oh my God, they want you back. And I was like, no, 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 that's never happens. It's, once you leave, you
Yeah.
leave. So yes, I had coffees, and I came in to see Andrew Darwin, and Simon Levine happened to be in reception and happened to make a joke, and before I knew it, it very quickly became a conversation about, actually, Joe, we think you've got unfinished business at DLA, and would you like to come back? And I then started to think critically about perhaps how could I come back. At the time, there had been a lot of changes as well within DLA. Simon had instigated a sort of a values proposition. So it's a much more thoughtful and professional look at how the firm wanted to be. A lot more sort of tweaks around the European platform and some superb lateral hires. There'd been a natural recycling of some of the partners, and therefore it felt like a fresher firm with, again, a huge ambition. But where I sort of was completely obsessed when I moved back was, what is going to work for my clients? Now, I hear a lot of people talk about what they want as partners and interviewing partner candidates now. They talk about themselves, of course,
Yes.
but we're not unique.
No.
The law is
No.
highly competitive. What is going to work for clients? What is going to both make a personally and professionally successful move? Um, Having made the decision to move back, again, it never occurred to me that, you know, all of the data exists on you as to how well you did financially before you left. Are you going to be able to
Right.
achieve this? I didn't think like that. I just felt that this was the time the market was shifting again. There was some exciting opportunities, and I'd had some very, very positive and encouraging conversations again with clients, which transcended. On my first day back, that one particular client instructed me on 2 deals. And I remember opening my laptop, or having been given a couple of hours into sort of returning a laptop, and thinking, like, oh my God, everyone thinks I've come back and I know what to do. The IT systems to update. Now, oh my God, they really did want the work. Like, you know, we need to get going. And I know I'm talking about me alone. I moved with a team, and I moved back with a partial team, and none of what any successful partner does. And I actually don't mean myself as successful. I just mean you tend to move with people. But it was that realization that when I came back, being super busy and being thrown in back up to the coal face, I never had one doubt. I genuinely mean this, Stephen. I never had one doubt that coming back was the right thing to do.
So could I ask you, is the client in strategy on day one, was that the same client that said your time is done at Proskauer?
Yeah.
So I'm getting a feeling that there was some kind of coordination between DLA Piper and that client.
Yeah.
I don't know whether there was.
There had been a conversation around, we need Joe to do X, Y, and Z. But I think, this is why I talk about career journeys.
Yeah.
There's never a straight line.
No.
I think people can get really obsessed that you go from A to B. And actually, for me, success has been coming back, but that shouldn't be seen as going backwards. Actually, it's going forwards.
Yes.
It all depends what you're joining, what you want, and how you've sort of canvassed your thoughts on your delivery. I mean, it would be wrong of me not to say what I also say to fellow partners who I chat or mentor is like, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror. You've got to decide what's going to work for you. And only you know what that means, the impact that your career decisions are going to have on your clients, on your team, importantly, on your family. Our jobs, or certainly speaking of mine, has a huge impact on everything. It's a 24/7 culture. We can talk about what that can mean and sort of the highs and lows of that. But you have to navigate you. So for some people, success and what that means for a happy environment for all of those sort of moving parts is not moving. For others, it can be moving several times because one shouldn't feel that they're tied if they're unhappy. There are seriously important parts of firms which just don't connect. They may decide to scale back investment in a particular area, which doesn't speak to anything negative around that partner's decision for having moved or the client. It just no longer fits. So you have to think about what suits you and be prepared for uncomfortable answers.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And I think this is a really interesting sort of story of, I think you said at one point that it's generally when DLA came calling again, you thought, no, I can't go back. And obviously you must have left originally on quite good terms. And I
Yeah.
often say to partners who are leaving, or firms where they get into well, I used to say when I was a recruiter, when they get into a spat with departing partners, I used to think this is crazy because it's a very, very small world. People always have referral work and you never know what's going to happen. And I think you're a classic tale of, you leave on good terms. The firm moves forward. As you said, you weren't really moving back, you were moving forward. And I don't know whether you considered other firms when you did decide, to leave, whether it just sort of came back to DLA, but it was obviously a completely different firm. As you said, your IT system was different.
Yeah. No, I did consider other firms and there were other sort of conversations because I wanted to take charge of where I wanted to go next. So it wasn't a fully orchestrated pincer movement with no input from Joe.
Yeah.
Far from it. But you do have to think about what is going to work, and firms do change. Leadership brings about change. The economic environment brings about change. I think US firms can be a little bit more fickle to change because of it depends upon their depth out of the US. Because there may be moments when they decide that London is on a push, or they want to scale back in Asia Pac or wherever it may be. I sort of, in thinking about today's conversation, am I glad about every move I have? Yes, I don't have regrets. It's all about positive. But I do think that people in making any form of career choice need to think about living their life now because that's all you have.
I totally agree with that. So, from your side,
Yeah.
what is being a successful partner, and how is that different? If it is different in a UK firm than a US firm, because you've had that experience of the two, and you've had that experience of coming back again. So,
Yeah.
what is being a successful partner from your point of view?
So I feel slightly embarrassed because I don't feel truly successful because I always want more, never want to stand still. So I'm going to look at and talk about myself and others. But I think you can't avoid the very basic. There's a lot of hard work involved. There's a huge amount that you have to grit and commit to. You need to be resilient because never has our work been more challenging with complex, really involved issues. The numbers, as in, the value of transactions, the underlying deal values have got bigger. They're more geographically intertwined, they're knotty problems. And I think that you have to have this ability to respond to those challenges and opportunities. So resilience is critical, and you can't avoid hard work. I also think you have to be authentically yourself,
Okay.
particularly as you become a more senior partner and take on leadership roles.
Right.
Not People talk about bringing their whole selves to work. What I mean is slightly different, and forgive me for coming at this from a slightly sort of a female angle. But when I first started off as a trainee, there were fewer female partners. You mentioned Catherine as one of them. But there were very few, and you just never spoke about your children. You just didn't. I have, as I've got older, hopefully a little bit wiser, but as I've become more comfortable and arguably more successful, I'm very aware that it's important to be, you have to be able to resonate with clients. You have to speak with authenticity. And sometimes that means that you are going to say things which are uncomfortable. And part of that is being able to perhaps put yourself into that situation. But there are many, many traits that will also underpin success. But if you aren't resilient and you can't respond to these changes, you can't be authentically yourself, and you can't sort of really work hard and commit and align to what's needed, there's no short route in my mind to being successful.
Okay. I often used to, and I'm interested whether you agree with this, say to the recruiters that I led and managed, at the end of the day, there are plenty of good recruiters, like there are a lot of very good lawyers. And the client, subliminally or not subliminally or overtly, needs to like you because they're going to spend a lot of time with you, potentially a lot of time in your case on deals, and then they kind of want to be happy sitting next to you and being and working with you. Do you think likability in your practice area, and I say your practice area because I think if you're a pensions lawyer or maybe a tax lawyer, forgive me saying this about those people, accept that they may be a little bit odd occasionally, but in your practice area, do you think that's right, that you have to your clients need to like you?
I've never thought about it in that way. Possibly, yes. I think you have to have rapport. I think you have to be respected. And if you get on and that you can build connections which help you understand mindset, then that probably is going to help. I do think you have to be super careful around emotive words such as like. And the reason why is I've had conversations both with clients and with my team. It's that they start to personalize decisions.
Okay.
And that, for me, is the first potential pitfall you have to navigate around. The moment you bring in that personal emotion and you're taking it on you in a way that makes you think this is all about you, I think is not the right one. It's about outward looking, and as I've said to junior partners who I've mentored, it's just business. So the decision not to appoint you isn't just about you, it is about the whole business proposition.
Yeah.
But undoubtedly, if you can't make some sort of connection, if there isn't something that you can connect to, so that likability in the wider context, you're right, you're not going to get off the ground because the landscape is so competitive.
Yeah.
I mean, in years gone by, You could probably say, "I know I've acted for a client for this year." I can think of the booming voices in my head, and they've only had this. That's not now. There are panel law firms. There are It's a very fluid and competitive, aggressive marketplace. Loyalty definitely exists, and you've got to have the ability to connect with your clients. And I'm really fortunate that I've worked with clients for a long time. If I look at that, the teams and what we've done is orchestrate people who fit neatly into their respective culture.
Yeah.
If you are clients are high is a high performance industry, responsiveness, accountability. You need to mirror some of that. But if you're not doing it authentically, was what I was trying to say earlier, you're seen through pretty quickly, and all of that trust dissipates.
Yes. Okay. No, I understand that. So you mentioned hard work, resilience, authenticity. Do you think in a US firm there are different attributes or to
So,
to being successful? You think they're exactly the same?
so I would say, everything I've described, I saw equally on my career journey. But my experience and having spoken with fellow partners who have had similar, experiences, as in had a move to a US law firm, the environments can be harsher.
Okay. What does that mean?
Judgments are formed quite quickly because of
Okay.
what you have to deliver. And I think that it depends upon the environment you're in. So certain firms may have an up and out policy if you're not performing. I think you also have to remember about the whole way in which the US firms, certainly the US partners, are not tied or locked in. So you literally can resign and move with your team. So you have to find a different glue to connect you slightly differently to firms which have perhaps lock-in periods or can be a bit more Machiavellian over how they would allow a resigning partner to exit. So when I say harsher environment, I mean my experience was you perform your A game every day. It there's no room for anything other than that, which was both exciting, exhausting, and exhilarating. But does that mean you don't perform your A game when you're somewhere else? No, I would just say you're judged slightly differently.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. I wonder whether that's the case, whether in UK firms, maybe not DLA Piper for you, but not other UK firms, they have become slightly harsher, particularly ones where they've had a lockstep. When they don't have one, obviously that's not the case with DLA Piper. You haven't had a lockstep, if ever, I don't think. But whether that might be the case in some UK firms, they have become harsher as well. But I don't know.
I think you also sort of look at the outlook. So if you are a domestic firm and you have no international exposure, your sort of inbound appropriate behaviors and what you're trying to cultivate is going to be to trying to create a more cohesive structure, partnership, where you've got cultural and client differences at play.
Yeah.
It becomes trickier. But I think to be successful, I don't think changes in any environment, certainly not for me, that I would answer. I would say quite
Okay.
contrary.
Yeah. Okay. So, as someone who's obviously you've been a lateral yourself, and you've been involved with recruiting laterals, and you've mentioned already that sometimes laterals, I think this is what you said, focus on themselves and perhaps don't focus on where their clients are best
Yes.
placed. So, look, sort of building on that, what do you think the two or three reasons you see that laterals that you've had experience of sort of either succeed or don't succeed?
I would say there's probably a combination, possibly not doing the homework fully on the firm that they're joining. And perhaps by that I mean not understanding or wanting to understand perhaps some of the reasons for people who have left, or what clients have said, or how people respond because they're so committed to wanting that move for status, money, whatever it may be. And trying to really understand what you're joining is so important because once you've joined, that's a commitment. And particularly if you're responsible for people and clients who follow you, it's a heavy weight. I think also you need to take time to get to know the firm that you've joined and not just assume you can fit in. I think I have seen through experiences of other partners, not just myself here, that some firms have expected you to arrive, literally plug in, and success grow, like the plug and play model. And that I think is just oversimplification. I mean, I can also be a little bit sort of brutal in my own view in that I don't understand how no clients can follow. I mean, we talk about laterals and they'll say, it's really difficult to bring the clients. I was about what conversations did you have in advance? How have you gone about this? Because ultimately this is a business decision. You've got to think about the underlying firm business. You owe it to your partners who are existing and indeed potential laterals to have the successful platform that you have. But I would say that the whole legal life never stands still. So when I joined Proskauer, it's a much smaller partnership. You are sort of thrown in and you get to meet a whole load of partners and they try and connect and find ways to work together. When you're in a much bigger partnership, and you've got hundreds of people all over the world to navigate, it's so much harder, but it takes time. And therefore, having thoughtful integration plans that cross group, I will say with the sector head on, you've got to think about what connections, how do you try and navigate the best out of the people you're bringing in? Because connecting the dots, making partners who have joined feel comfortable, giving them an environment to thrive, creating a sense of calmness. You can see partners with eyes. You can see when things aren't working out because there's sort of like an inbuilt fear that
Yes.
they're being found out. It's just not gelling, and I would say if others around you can see and feel that, clients will feel it, and I think I wouldn't be judged badly by saying this. You tend to see in type A personalities, which lawyers are, that when it becomes particularly difficult, bad characteristics, and we call it the sharp elbow mentality, pops out. And that is hugely off-putting, I would say, to sophisticated clients. It's also not a way to drive best behavior. You perform at your best, but that doesn't necessarily mean comfort. But you do need to find that way to feel that you are able to tap into what you need. So now we talk very clearly about integration plans. There's a thought process around laterals. I don't think perhaps I'm going to annoy people at DLA, but I don't think there was a real integration plan around me because she knows it, right?
She knows everything.
And actually, I had to spend quite a bit of time saying, I don't. Please reconnect me with the new people. I've come back because the firm has changed. You're going to have to bring me on this journey too. It's much more sophisticated. And once I've reminded everybody that, the IT system, I did need to go on all of those courses again. That was fine. But now it's very different.
Again, that's fascinating because obviously what I do now is help laterals integrate, and you said a couple of things which have really sort of struck me, particularly about a firm the size of DLA Piper. I think there is a lack of realization for laterals coming in of how complicated those firms are now. And whilst I certainly can't provide, I don't know where everyone is. I think you find a lot of laterals quickly, if things don't go well, pretty quickly, they do, as you've said, there's a fear that starts to haunt them.
Yeah.
And that, that can have a kind of rolling effect. And one of the things I try and do, and I find that the coachees that I have, they ask me on a couple of occasions, they've asked me sort of several times, is this confidential? Is this really confidential? Are you really not going to tell anyone? And I go, no, unless you have to tell me you've broken SRA rules or done something illegal, then it is totally confidential. And then they really show their fear, and they show, I'm giving an example. Some people with clients, look, you're right on the clients, but some people just have bad luck, and a client either goes bust or something happens, which means they can't actually bring the client in the way that they did. But talking to them and helping them realize that the firm they've moved to has a huge amount of other potential clients that they can get their teeth into. Often people don't think about that stuff themselves if they haven't really had experience of building up those client connections, of overtly building them up. They will have built them up in their previous firm, but they might not have realized how they've actually done it, because they've
Right.
done it. And so I think that, your point about integration plans, is absolutely key. And realizing that coaches, even very sophisticated type A partners, as you say, they need sometimes someone to talk to and to show vulnerability. And
Yes.
often they won't or don't do that to someone internally. It's very tricky for them to do
Yeah.
to someone internally.
It is, and that's why, as you become more senior, you take on roles and positions, I feel very responsible for the people I work with. I feel that the new laterals that join, it's exciting in getting it right, but you do have to give them time, and I think you also, as a incoming partner and anyone thinking about moving, yes, you may have a large client book. And that may excite you. But when you move to a firm, there's probably relationships that already exist somewhere. There's been some touch points, and you've got to work out how you bring them together. If you go at them as competing factions,
Yeah.
that's really, really bad. And I think it's one and one becomes three rather than one becomes two. And just being aware that you are part of something larger. And when I say it's not just all about you, it's really important, because actually being successful is also bringing others with you on that journey.
Yes, it totally is, isn't it? Because if it's just yourself,
It's
then it's a
very
silly role.
lonely. Yeah, yeah.
It is very lonely if it's just yourself. Yeah, okay, again, that's really really interesting to hear that, particularly the thought when you came back to DLA that, oh, she knows everything, she's only been away 4 years, nothing's really changed, because they've all been sitting there and it's changed slowly around them, as opposed to you coming back in and then thinking, wow, this is a
Yeah.
completely different firm. Was it a different building that you came back
Yeah,
to as well? Or-
different building. There'd been a whole new team into real estate. We had it was everything was different, which was great actually. I mean, that's why that is probably, Stephen, who sort of hit the nail that made me think about this. Because I don't think I could have gone back to the same building actually. Coming back somewhere different, everything felt new, and
Yeah.
that was good.
Yeah, okay. Well, I have to pat myself on the back, because the William Norton team was one that I
Yeah.
did. Yeah, I do understand that bit about the building. So that may have felt more about like going back then, if you'd gone back to that
Yeah.
old building.
Yeah. And that, the reasons that you leave, you need to sometimes feel that you've grown as well. And because of that, I changed, I had grown, I think personally, a lot. I'd had a difficult time building a platform in a market which was far from easy, in a very competitive landscape, at a firm where you had to deliver. And therefore, coming back, albeit coming to DLA in its newly, as you know, Stephen, DLA doesn't stand still, so there's constant change, right? But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
also good.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay. So, what's the best moment you've had as a partner, and the worst, if you could talk about those, and why?
So I knew you were going to ask me these two questions because you kindly prepared me, so I didn't go, oh. And I've thought about these long and hard, and I cannot discern one single moment which has been my best or my worst day.
Okay.
And there are reasons for that, because I've had the privilege to do so many great things. It blends together and gives me a sense of personal satisfaction that I've had the ability, that the choices I made 20 plus years ago have brought me to a place where I get to do this, right? I mean, how lucky am I? What I would say is that I was really impatient as a junior and I wanted partnership. So when I made partner, I felt, even though actually nothing changed because you carried on doing exactly the same work for a bit, and you just, but for me, that, that was a signal to the outside world I was good enough to become one. So that would have stood out, because it was an easy way to explain to my family, like, this is what I've been working, I've got it.
Yeah.
On the negative ones, or bad days, again, there have been many which blend in. But I was thinking about this, which is that I don't deal with life or death. So again, I see this as a privilege. And my clients and my team expect us to find a response. They expect us to deal and help them and navigate this. So therefore, there are many times when you think, God, can it get any worse? And normally it does before it gets better. And I'm not sort of trivializing it. I'm not trying to sidestep it, because I can think of moments when client, a critical person, a client passed away unexpectedly. I can think of a moment where we didn't win what I thought was a really important transaction that would have been instrumental at changing perception platform. We didn't get it. We got something else that turned out to be better instead. So, but there are days which there are many things that hit us. It's how you respond to it. So, as I said, there's a blend of brilliance and a blend of days which I would rather not repeat.
Yeah, fair enough. So would you do anything differently if you had your time again?
I try to live not by regrets, but yes, there are a couple. I probably would have been less pushy as a junior, because I needed to learn patience. And I think that possibly, looking back, was a factor of there being less females doing what I wanted to do. And therefore, I was trying to force my way. I think there is a sense of calmness that comes with, I suppose, experience and seniority. But I think that's a palpable difference in my own personality if I looked
Right.
how I was 15 years ago. And in terms of other regrets,
Mm.
no, I think you learn by your mistakes and you grow,
Yes.
but not from regrets.
Yes. No, every knockback brings you closer to success. That's
I mean,
taught.
yeah, but also I've been saying to colleagues, with partner, with lots of things that happen. There are times when you are deeply uncomfortable in our work. For various reasons, I mean, deeply uncomfortable. That may be lack of sleep, it may be stress, it may be trying to work out how you deliver the impossible. And then there comes a point which you manage the situation, the transaction closes, you pull off the International Real Estate Summit, and everyone turns up and it's a success. And you look back and go, wow, I've learned so much by being uncomfortable. And I think, as part of the partner journey and sort of the elements for how to go about trying to do better each day, is learning from being uncomfortable.
Yeah, that sounds good advice. And what mentors have you had in your career? Any key pieces of advice?
So I've had some wonderful mentors. I think more by chance at the early, when I was a junior and as a part, because mentoring wasn't really a thing. You didn't talk about it. In fact, probably, Stephen, if you had, you'd have been seen as weak and needing extra support. What's the problem with her? But I had two particular partners, one female, one male, who would give me words to sort of encourage me. It's like, well, why aren't you doing that? Put yourself forward. And giving me the belief that I could. Because sometimes when you're really busy, when you're deep down in client work, you don't sit back and see the bigger picture about what you want. So now I'm very mindful of saying to people, what do you want? Look up, check what you want to achieve. Um, Before I left DLA, after I'd had my daughter, we brought in a mentoring program, and I was one of the partners who instigated that. And I was very proud to do that because we put in place a formal program around mentoring. And it was definitely not coaching, it was there
Yeah.
as a mentoring program, and then it turned into many other things. And then I took that sort of idea on. And now I think, in terms of, there are people who you meet, both clients and other professionals, who you spend time with and who will give you insights. And they are just like, it's like a fountain of goodness, the great energy. And you find these people and you hold them close.
Yeah,
Because
fountain of goodness. What a great expression.
you get these moments where fate will throw you in their way. I suppose what I have found is that as I have become older and to many more successful, there is an isolation that comes with it, because you've got less peers who are able to directly correlate experience. If you're tasked with creating a global strategy for your real estate sector, if you're tasked, and of course you do it with people, but ultimately you're shouldering the output. You are trying to galvanize the support. You are trying to create that client opportunity. It becomes harder to have not got any comparable experience to give you the right input, because sometimes you do need fresh eyes. And I would say that has been a challenge as I've, gone through my career, because the stories that you need, and I think learning through stories is so important. The stories that you give to a partner in their their first 5 years as they're going through tremendous change are very different to someone like myself. And I think that's only dawned on me as I've realized how much I probably mentor everybody else.
Yes.
So,
Wow,
so
that's interesting.
yeah.
Totally.
And so where does that leave you? I think that leaves you with a club of partners, and I'm thinking of a few now who have become friends as well as partners, who you are very open and honest with about yourself. And if you can create that and you can talk together on that basis, it's actually very helpful.
Words of wisdom. That's definitely words of wisdom. So moving just to looking forward, Joe.
Yeah.
So what factors do you think are going to affect your practice area, law generally, in the next sort of 4 or 5 years? One or two factors you could think about, and obviously AI is an obvious one, but maybe that isn't one of the ones you want to mention.
So I sort of think of two competing themes which are really transcending every conversation at the moment. You've mentioned one. I'll start with the complexity of the world, the interconnectivity of geopolitical events and client needs are absolutely evolving and growing, even if they themselves don't fully understand it. You think you're buying an operational business, and I'm going to pick an example. You've bought into a student living platform, and the next thing you know is there are restrictions on people's movement, and suddenly the type of student that you need, who's an overseas student and quoted. There are so many changes that are outside of clients' controls, that when you are looking at an underwrite, you're looking at the fundamental core basics. there are so many different moving parts now. In fact, it's almost too much noise. So you have to work out what you shut out. And I think clients are requiring, and certainly I find us and what my team, what we're doing is giving clarity. We're trying to clarify that complex situation because actually how things were done has gone. Like it's gone. Even sort of like there's still the odd comment about in pre-COVID, post-COVID. Everything's changed. We just need to work out that it's changed. And therefore, if the clients have more complex needs, how are you as a business responding? Have you got the right people and the skill set? Have you got the ability to continue to change? And how are you actually listening to what your clients are saying? What are they telling you? Because I think every client is telling us something, we're just not listening. And I think that's really important what you pick up. And that comes with AI. And we cannot ignore we're at the cusp of something pivotal. And I don't think any of us really fully understand how it's going to transform the legal landscape. I think we've got good ideas and we've got different firms have got different processes and protocols in place. And of course, we're all doing it. And of course, AI is enhancing the way in which we work. It should drive efficiency. It should drive all sorts of enablers. But then you have situations which does that mean that we will need less people? How do you train people? How do you scrutinize your output? What do you do when clients say, we don't want you to use AI? Because there are some clients who want AI used in a different way. There's an automatic assumption that everything is AI beneficial. And there's certain clients saying yes within certain situations. So I think if we were to like fast forward and look into the 2030s, we will look back and see how old-fashioned certain situations still are. But ultimately, whilst you can improve your output, you can have certain fact checkers and you can automate documents and create processes. Some of the best lawyering, some of the best moments that I see and sort of stick out are where you've added the experience factor.
Yes.
You can put something into context and give, I know that is looking like this, and this, but you've got to go on and it will be okay. That comes from experience. I will be intrigued and I will look with interest as to how that evolves, because if you put AI with what I was saying at the outset, it's that really complex kind of a cauldron of events that's driving clients, it's going to create certain new ways of working.
And you mentioned the experience factor. So if the junior lawyers don't get that experience in the way that you did, then how will they use that experience factor in 10 or 15 years? Who knows? Or maybe it's just going to be a different experience factor
Yeah.
in 10 or 15 years. So we're moving towards the end of that's been a fascinating podcast, Joe. So I try and ask my guests a couple of finishing questions. First one, what are your 3 non-negotiable behaviors for you and your team to ensure success?
Trust, responsiveness,
Yeah,
collaboration.
excellent. That's a wonderful 3. I've had a few people recently giving me 6 or 7 in the 3 in a classic lawyer fashion. So that's very good. And what's your one golden rule to be a successful partner?
Oh, gosh, one. I would say, from bearing in our wonderful chat this morning,
Yes.
I would say to be successful, be prepared to be uncomfortable and challenge yourself.
Well, okay. That's a very interesting golden rule. So thank you for that. I was just thinking about it after you said it. That's a very good one. So thanks for being our guest, Joe, on Beyond Billables Lessons from Top Law Firm Partners. It's been really fascinating hearing from you on what makes a successful partner, and thank you for making the time. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in, and join us on our next episode when we'll hopefully have another top partner who will share their secrets of success. So see you next time.